Bob Onder, Congressman from Missouri's 3rd Congressional District. After a great week back home, this week we were back in D.C., where we House Republicans are continuing to follow through on the promises we made to the American people. To kick off the week, in the House Education and Workforce Committee, I questioned the Chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, about the Union of Academic Workers and its role in encouraging anti-Semitism on that college campus. Under the First Amendment, we Americans all have a right to free speech, and certainly that includes the right to voice one's opinion on Israel and the Middle East. But what students don't have a right to do is threaten and intimidate other students, and thereby deprive them of the opportunity to receive the education they are working and paying for. Anti-Semitism on our college and university campuses is something that all Americans, regardless of religion or politics, should take seriously and work to end. Next, I headed over to the House Judiciary Committee to help expose what can only be called money laundering of your tax dollars to various left-wing organizations and programs. The funneling of taxpayer funds toward so-called non-government organizations or NGOs for leftist pet projects is unacceptable. One such project was Girl to Girl, funded by an NIH grant for nursing research. This program used your money to text minors sexually explicit sex ed content without the consent of parents. And that was just one example of the hundreds of projects and grants caught misusing taxpayer funds. For a country more than $36 trillion in debt, it is outrageous to think that any taxpayer funds are used for this politically motivated nonsense. Thankfully, the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was able to expose many cases of waste, fraud, and abuse earlier this year. Now it's up to Congress to act to ensure that the misuse of your hard-earned money is stopped for good. Jumping to Wednesday, I had my opportunity to speak on one of my bills in the House Committee on Natural Resources. America's National Churchill Museum Historical Landmark Act would designate America's National Churchill Museum at Westminster College as a historic landmark. Recognized by Congress in 2009, America's National Churchill Museum began construction in the 1960s to commemorate the 20th anniversary of Winston Churchill's famous speech at Westminster College. St. Mary the Virgin Aldermanbury Church was moved stone by stone from where it stood in London since 1677 to Fulton, Missouri. The church was reconstructed to the 17th century architect Christopher Wren's exact specifications in the spot where Sir Winston Churchill gave his famous Iron Curtain speech. Winston Churchill has inspired many leaders past and present by his example of resilience and determination. The center counterpart to my bill was introduced to Congress by Senators Eric Schmitt and Josh Hawley, of course, of Missouri, to commemorate this pivotal moment in American history. Finally, this week, in Congress, we voted to codify President Trump's executive orders, his DOGE cuts, officially in the Rescissions Act of 2025. President Trump and House Republicans ran on the promise to combat bloated government spending by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. As part of this mission, the Department of Government Accountability investigated where taxpayers were being squandered, and what they found was shocking. Our government was in the process of spending $1 million for voter ID in Haiti, $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street, $643,000 for LGBTQIA plus programs in the Western Balkans, and $5.1 million to strengthen, quote, resilience of LGBTQIA global movements. These are just a few of the many shocking examples of what your taxpayer dollars were being wasted on. But not anymore. The Rescissions Act of 2025, introduced by Majority Leader Steve Scalise, codifies President Trump's rescissions request to cut wasteful spending on foreign aid initiatives within the State Department and USAID, and on woke public broadcasting by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, including NPR and PBS. House Republicans are fighting to get our government back on track, and we won't stop working to cut bloated spending, restore common sense to the federal government, and change the trajectory of Washington's spending. Thank you, and God bless the great state of Missouri. I'm Dr. Bob, and that's my prescription.